talked about addressing customer needs, right? And obviously, in the digital world, it's all about customer touch points and customer experience, right? And I know you have been working with a lot of banks around the world in dealing with, digitizing their processes and addressing customer needs. So if you were to actually have a view on how this whole aspect of customer experience is likely to unfold from a short to medium term standpoint, what would your view be?
Okay, thanks once again, and good morning, everybody. Ram, the way I look at it, taking the cue from what Sandeep mentioned, GCC is, as much as what we say it's connected to the world, it also has a flavor of a combination, because the workforce or the people who are living in this particular geography, depending upon each country, anywhere between 80% to 85% of the people are actually expats. So this market has to cater to not just what is required in this market, but also keep the trend with what is actually happening across the globe, depending upon which geography the people come from. And given that and the frictionless experience which everybody is looking for, as much as we say fintechs are eating up some part of the banking portfolio, they are also enabling the banks to fulfill some of the needs which they are not able to do themselves. There are some limitations, and most of the limitations in the way we look at it, or from what we have seen in other markets, is what is the limited capacity of our own thinking process. We think it's a limitation, but actually it may not be a limitation at all. We try and interpret the regulations, we try and interpret the customer experiences in the way we want it, or some of our gray hairs actually probably is a limitation there rather than the enablers. And that's where I think whether it's what Mashreq has done here, or what SBI is trying to do, or what NPCI is trying to do in India, or what some of these Revolut and Scully and many other platforms which are trying to revolutionize how you look at banking and how you bring in the open banking standards, are actually redefining some of these elements. And if I were to look at what we have seen in other parts of the market, which are probably like what Chetan mentioned, India is probably ahead in payments, but at the same time, if you were to look at the entire lending and the kind of institutional banking, like what Sandeep mentioned, probably they're far behind. It's the question of how do you make sure that what you see in some part of the world, how do you make sure that that best practices actually spread out to the other markets? And that's where we see a big opportunity for players like us, and also the expertise that we can actually bring in of what's happening in institutional banking in probably UK and Europe and in the US, to what's happening in this part of the world. And what is happening in the payments and in the fintechs and the revolution that we are seeing in terms of the ubiquitous payments and the kind of frictionless experience that the customers are looking for, which is happening in this market, to the Western world, where we are still talking about ACH, we are still talking about cards physically, and still don't have a very secured way of payment. We still have the amount of frauds that are actually happening on the retail payments because of the lack of security. Those experiences into the Western world, and that's how we see the market evolving, and that's how we see people like us and the technology providers, partnering with the banks and the fintechs to bring in that revolution. And of course, in this market, the biggest element is we all talk about people like us, but there is a significant amount of blue-collar workers and the financial inclusion piece, which Chetan also covered. And how do we make sure that the financial inclusion experience of what happens in India and Africa and other markets to also cater to this market. Because the bottom of the pyramid, as we all know, based on what we have seen in the last 25, 30 years of our experience, that seems to be the most profitable and probably less demanding than what you would see as the high net worth customers as well. So there isn't really too much of difference in terms of how do you need to approach. Of course, the scale will be different, the way you approach will be different, but that's another profitable segment.
Interesting. So basically, this almost sounds like arbitrage of customer experience across markets.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's that's what the customers customers want as well, because right, the customer experience is going to be the key, and that's going to drive whether it's the banks who are providing that customer experience or whether it's the fintechs which are providing that customer experience. Once again, taking clue from what Sandeep mentioned, I could be sitting and doing a corporate banking transaction to make a payment in Philippines or in Dubai. But I know that how I make my payment as an individual, and if my experience as an individual and my experience as an authorized signatory in a institution is going to be too different, and if it's going to have so much of restrictions, I'm going to be frustrated. So that's the kind of experience that we need to bring into the customers.
So success story is in one market actually getting transferred to other markets. That's really what you're saying.